On this episode of the John 1911 podcast, the hippie bank falls, exploding airplanes, Wagner goes full Pornhub, and the zebra had it coming.
Okay, good morning, everybody. This is Danny and Marky, and this is episode 294 of the John 1911 podcast. It is currently 11:14 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and because of the way how quickly the news is changing and things are going on, I feel the need to timestamp. So, haven't had Danny on in a hot minute because he's been out of the office, and he is dying to get on the podcast. And I just want to go ahead and say this right now because the schedule today's Thursday, like I said, but I have a hard out because we have a new, not a replacement team, but we have a new group of attorneys coming in for a meeting at 1:00 for a different project. So I have it's probably best if we don't do a 2-hour podcast. I don't know what it'll be, but
I fully agree with that. 2 hour would be a bit long because of what I have going on. So
yeah.
look, I don't want to say short and to the point, medium and to the point sounds.
We
good
got a
for
lot.
me.
I mean, we have the new member Kraken. He's been around for a while, but has been on the podcast, and we did some test pods. And, be like, dude, we'll just do, let's just do a short. It's easy. We'll just talk, because he's never done pods. Not that he's nervous. He's very good at it. But then, I look at the calendar and it's like, my God, it's been 1 hour and 45 minutes. We got to get the hell off of here. And it's like talking to you.
Oh, shut the! I won't say it. You're the king of extemporaneous, so I don't want to hear it.
Hey,
okay?
My street name was Laquitius.
All right, bitch. So anyway, in the world of politics and national whatever, between drones, between interest rates, between testimonies on Capitol Hill, it's been insane.
I have seen zero testimonies on Capitol Hill. I just heard, who's the guy that I guess they confirmed to be ambassador to India? Is it Gascon or whatever? And it's like, that's fine.
Yes.
I don't know why they're having a battle over that. Democratic president, Gascon wants to be an ambassador to India. Don't drink the water. I mean, I'm not saying anything whatever, but you know what I mean? It's I don't know. You know what? I guess I didn't listen to the hearings, but I guess I could say this. Look, India is a pretty important country. They're typically a non-aligned country, but being sent as the ambassador to India is not like a gimme, like being the ambassador to the United Kingdom. The president doesn't need the ambassador to communicate with the government of the United Kingdom. You know what I mean? We just talk directly.
Well, you might want to ask Pakistan for their views on that.
Well, yeah, but the ambassador. But the thing is, you don't typically send. The more, depending on the relationship or the nature of the relationship or the relationship of the cultures or whatever, there's two types of ambassadors there's three types of ambassadors in the world. A lot of people don't know this. There's political, they're all technically political appointees, but there's political appointees did they appoint James Baker, the ambassador to the UK, the Court of St. James, the ambassador to the UK, did George W. Bush do that? Somebody did that. And
that sounds familiar.
Yeah, and he worked for his father, for HW. And it's what's a great posting? He's a political operative. It doesn't really matter. Whereas
he's a good old boy.
Yeah, whereas the ambassador to Iraq, the ambassador to Afghanistan, the ambassador to Pakistan, those are pretty important, especially at various points. Those are pretty important jobs. You know what I mean? In the ambassadorships, the ambassador to Japan is a pretty important job. Whereas some flunkies hey,
the ambassador to Aruba.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's what exactly. I'd be the ambassador. No, you could be the charge d'affaires in Aruba. The ambassador is Aruba owned by the Netherlands or something, or ruled by the Netherlands? But yeah, you see what I'm saying. So it's
owned by exactly. The the magnitude of where you're going.
And so it's like, wait a minute. So Gascon going, I think it's Gascon, Garsk, however you say his name, is going to India, and it's like, does it really matter? Then part of me is kind of like, the more I think about it, I'm like, I don't know. Is he really qualified to go to India, the world's largest democracy? Let's be honest. India is the world's largest democracy. And America and India are not close politically. No. I mean, internationally, but we need to be. We should be. So. But anyway, whatever.
Well, actually, before we went live, I was watching your girlfriend, Janet Yellen, testify to the Senate.
Look, dude, that was one date. We had a burger. We never kissed. I don't know why you're throwing that shit up in my face.
Because you swapped spit.
Yeah, I said we never kissed. Then, no, we didn't.
Yeah, well,
that would be baby powder that we swapped. I'm sorry.
That's right. Well,
that's dry.
Well, anyway, what actually, I don't want to even say impress me. I actually want to get to the part of just made me cringe and almost to a point of turning my stomach is she was so condescending towards the Republican senators, but when the Democrat senators were doing the questioning to her, it was all yuck it up, interest rates are fine, banks closings are fine, this or that. I mean, running cover for the administration like you wouldn't believe, rather than fessing up and just saying, look, we have a problem. Why do they hide this? People are not stupid.
You're being too political and too partisan.
Oh, okay, you're right. You're right.
I'm being honest.
I jacked up the interest rates and I closed the bank.
Joe Biden didn't jack up the interest rates.
His Fed did.
It's not his Fed. The Federal Reserve is independent, operates independently of the regular government. That way, it's not politically influenced by the president. Do you remember when Donald Trump was president and he was screaming at the Fed about the interest rates? Yes. He was mad as fuck, and he couldn't do shit. He was like, well, I'm going to fire the Fed chair. It's like, okay, that's about all you could do, but you get no say. I mean, look, okay, let's back up here a minute. Janet Yellen is she's a political operative, okay? She's
very much so.
Well, she's a political appointee. She's not a raging partisan. She's obviously a Democrat, but she's an economist, okay? She's worked in various administrations. It's kind of her bailiwick. There's a 50-cent word. She's a Secretary of the Treasury. We are having some banking blips, and she cannot get up there and start getting into all these big old cat fights with all these people on the Hill, because immediately what's going to happen is you're going to start to see sell-offs and you're going to start to see panics again. They're trying to project stability and control. They know what's going on. That's their job, dude. And the reality is, all I can say is the only thing that would be different is thank God Donald Trump isn't president right now, because if Donald Trump isn't president right now, the mainstream media would say we are about to go into a depression.
Yes, they would.
They would, because it's partisan. This is just like the vaccine. Okay, when Donald Trump was president, the Democrats hated the vaccine. Then when Joe Biden's fucking president, the Democrats love the vaccine. And it's like, what the fuck? It's like, look, you're an umpire. Call balls and strikes fairly. Am I a fan of Joe Biden? Of course not. Am I a fan of liberal economic policies? Of course not. Do I love Janet Yellen? Obviously not. She never got a second date. But I'm not gonna unfairly. I still
don't believe that.
I'm not gonna. Well, hey, look. She probably has a very nice pool, and I passed up my chance to be the pool boy. So, I could have been.
Well, she just wanted to see your cat-like moves.
Here's the
in the indoor Olympics. You ain't fooling nobody.
At 51, as I've gotten older, you have to realize something. Okay, your pool boy window in life is relative. It's the theory of relativity. It's the Einstein theory of dating. See, when you're 51, you think your pool boy days are over. But if Janet Yellen, she got to be in her late 70s. It's like, I mean, to her, I'm like, she's like, I'm an underwear model. It's like, hey, I can still clean that pool. So well, I could say, look, I could skim the top of that.
Oh my God, there goes the top sheet. But anyway, get the towel. But anyway, pool boy. the point is that her face though was priceless when one of the Republican senators basically mentioned, "Yeah, you're here in the Democrat-controlled Senate or this or that,
House control,
but
the
you
Republican
know,
controlled, or no, the
yeah,
Democrat
when you
controlled
go to
Senate.
the
Yeah,
Republican
Senate.
House, you might be a little bit more forthcoming." And the look on her face was like, "Oh fuck, yeah, I wasn't thinking of that." But she's all yip yowing it, all happy in the Democrat Senate, and come on, they're softballing it.
Yeah, of course they are. Well, you've got, okay, all right, okay, you're the chief political correspondent. So do you think for 1 second that and this is true if it's flipped, because we went through this with the Democrats when Donald Trump was president. Every Democrat in the House and the Senate acted like a fucking, not every, but most act like a fucking crazy person, okay? And they did everything they could to get a sound bite to make themselves look good for their personal political gain. And just because we're in the middle of a banking crisis that, if it isn't handled correctly, could cause widespread panic around the world, doesn't mean that there isn't some yahoo up there on the hill for personal reasons would try to do a gotcha on Janet Yellen so they could win the media cycle for the day personally, but they fucking tanked the fucking economy. Now that's an
Well,
exaggeration, but that's true.
no, it's not an exaggeration because some Democrats have actually alluded to blaming Trump for the banking problem.
Well, okay,
You tell me
let's
the answer to
shift.
that one.
I got the answer for you. I don't know the specific policies directly. Do you remember? You will remember. You have to remember because you're old like me. You're part of the old pool boy club. Okay. Do you remember Barney?
Yes, but see, I can still go down the runway in my thong where you
Okay.
can't.
So yeah, I'm sliding on the loop. So do you remember Barney Frank?
Yes.
Yeah, Barney Frank. Barney Frank's long out of Congress. 10, 15 years probably.
New York Democrat.
I think was he Boston? Was he New
Or
York?
wherever he
I
was
think
from. He was out
Boston.
east.
And he's Barney Frank was a longtime member of the House. Was at Finance Committee, chairman and everything.
Yes.
And so Barney Frank, what I'm about to say is a quote. So I'm not using this phrase. But it's a quote. The back in the day when you could be politically incorrect, some people behind his back. Watch your microphone, Danny. Some people behind his back would call him Barney Fag because he was a homosexual. So
Right. I remember that very well.
Yeah, not that it's neither here nor there. But so Barney Frank, when the banking crisis happened, when the economic crisis hit in the Great Recession, they called it, in 2007, 2008, and 2009, started in the summer of 2007. Barney Frank and Senator Chris Dodd, Chris Dodd, if I recall, was a Republican, possibly from Connecticut. I think it was Chris Dodd. So, but that was the creation of Dodd-Frank.
That's right.
And,
I remember
and
that very well.
Dodd-Frank was the new banking regulations, for solidifying, so basically tightening up the balance sheet and the restrictions and controlling of banks and the regulation of banks in the U.S.
Why don't you call it deregulation like it was?
Dude, you're smoking crack. Dodd-Frank increased regulation. Dodd-Frank, hold on, you asked, so I'm telling you.
Yeah,
so
go ahead.
Dodd-Frank was so onerous and is considered onerous by a lot of people that it just generates mountains and mountains and mountains of paperwork and a lot of busy work and costs a lot of money. So there was a movement when Donald Trump was president to come on, let's right size some of this, let's streamline some of this. I don't recall exactly what it was. I'm not a banker. I didn't pay that much attention to it, but they wanted to they would have these, Chase or, these giant banks, these too big to fail concept that, everyone hates. And then they're these smaller regional banks or boutique banks. And they were like, come on, these boutique banks are getting crushed by this. They can't possibly, they don't have the money. They don't have the manpower. Let's let go a little bit. They're not systemically, vulnerable to taking down the entire country. And so there was a move I believe, to ease some of the restrictions on smaller banks. Barney Frank was in the House, passed Dodd-Frank, the seminal financial bill of like really really the past 100 years, 80, 90 years, really it is. And then he left. He got on the board of, was it Signature Bank? Signature Bank, which has now gone under.
Yeah, the one that just failed.
The one that got under. And since he's Barney motherfucking Frank, when he's now working at a bank, he used his name and expertise and juice to push for slightly deregulating these smaller banks because they can't be as competitive as the big boys. And which happens to benefit the bank he's on the board on, and that bank got wiped out. And it's interesting. So politically, because you're the chief political correspondent, like I can talk, I can talk about. I don't want to talk too much, but Janet Yellen, people got to say what they got to say. They got to assure the markets. They have to, like, this is what we know. This is how it is. We're trying to keep the surprises from popping up. But the reality is, because Donald Trump is not president, if Donald Trump was president, he would be saying, we stepped in, we didn't, the people that the shareholders and whatever these banks that ran these things poorly, and you and I talked about that yesterday. He's like, they didn't get bailed out. We're taking care of the businesses, the payroll. We're taking care of the depositors and whatever. But now, since he's not president, all he's going to be talking about for the next 2 years is Democratic power brokers, Democratic donors, Democratic bigwigs, all these people, because he's going to play the populist card. And it's just one of those situations where if Donald Trump was president, he would be okay with what they did. But since he's not president, he's probably not going to be okay with what they did.
Well, of course, it's campaign fodder for him.
It's campaign fodder for him. We're going to hear about this for the next 2 years. And the reality is both sides have a point. Like I looked
Right.
at, okay, so you and I, we talked about the first bank that blew up is Silicon Valley Bank, SVB. Look, I'd never heard of SVB before anybody else. I'm not going to get on here and pretend that I'm a banking expert, okay? Like, I told you what I know yesterday. But I'm not the kind of guy that people hire to do finances. I'm the kind of guy.
We all know one.
Well, I'm the kind of guy who hires somebody. So, I'm not unfamiliar with all this. And so, SVB, Silicon Valley Bank, is a regional bank in Silicon Valley. Okay? Surprise! And so in Silicon Valley, and Donald Trump's going to make big hay of this. If you look at a bank typically has two types of customers. They've got what I would call your retail customer, and then they've got your commercial customer. A retail customer, in most cases, would be people listening to this podcast who have a job and then have a bank account or checking account, a savings account, okay, at your bank. And you pay your bills, and you put your money in the bank, and you do whatever, and that you're a retail customer, okay? A commercial customer might be a business that is using a bank as the deposits for their company. It's the place they scoop up the pay. That's where they collect the payroll to send money off to make payroll every 2 weeks. And here's the thing. Like I can tell you from my experience. Like I had to have money. We had to have money ready for payroll. Like it was $400,000 every 2 weeks, and we had to have the money ready a week before our people got their checks. Because we got, payroll's got it. Like the payroll company has to do all the taxes, do all this withholdings, individual, health insurance and all this other kind of shit. And, and then the payroll taxes and then kick it out. Like they can't do that in 30 seconds. So there's a window, like when you get your paycheck as an employee, typically the company that is paying your paycheck probably kick that money out in your direction minimum 2 weeks before. Really minimum, like the closest would be 10 days. But most of them are 2 weeks before. And sometimes, And so what happened was Silicon Valley Bank, it turns out the retail customer is only about 11% of the bank. People like normal everyday people who put their money in banks, and FDIC will insure that up to $250,000. I remember when it was $100,000. And the rest of the bank was basically businesses, either startup businesses, tech businesses, small businesses, all these businesses. And when this started to blow up and I realized, I was like, wow, this is going to be affecting fintech companies, financial technology companies, because it's all that California, Silicon Valley shit. And it's like, like I can say this now, Tactical T-shirts, we had a credit card processor, and this is not an unknown company. It's called Stripe. You could use these companies. It used to be when you had credit cards, you'd have these hard terminals, and you have to pay like it was $1,500 for the terminal. Then you paid a monthly fee, and then there was the service, like all these different fees, and it was crazy. But how do you make that work with the goddamn website? You can't. You have a software company, a fintech company, financial technology company, like Stripe was the most successful one, and they would accept the credit cards on your website. And why would you do that? Because PayPal was notorious. They could accept credit cards, but they were notorious for, keeping your money or holding your money and doing stuff. Well, it turns out Stripe, I believe, because they're a technology company, Stripe was out there and they're in trouble. And so, look, I can kick the Biden administration because I'm a Republican. But one of the rules I have in life is you can criticize any move the federal government makes. Republican, Democrat, Independent. My only rule is you have to have an alternative answer and explain how it's going to work. I don't have enough information to know what the Biden administration saw here. I do not have a look onto the books of SVB outside of publicly disclosed numbers. But if Stripe can't function, how many online businesses around the world suddenly can't sell shit? And that's just
domino effect.
That's just one customer. And here's another one. This one hit the news. Have you ever heard of a website called Etsy?
Yes.
Yeah. Have you ever used Etsy? Your wife use Etsy? Or people sell on Etsy or buy it? You've heard of it. You ever used it or know anyone that uses it?
I really don't know. I have heard of it. I'm not much on online shopping.
Well, sure. So, okay, Etsy, my understanding, again, I don't use Etsy. My understanding is Etsy's kind of like a micro online business website. So, like, for example, when we set up the John 1911 Armory store, we set up a store. Like, well, I have a programmer and a server and a dedicated server that's separate from john1911.com. That's a lesson I learned from Tactical T-shirts. To keep the store separate from the front-facing website, because if one overwhelms one, it won't take down the other one. But it's like, well, hey, why don't you set up an Etsy store? Like, I don't have to have all these programmers. I could just plug in a store, and the back end is all Etsy. It's like, well, number one, I don't own that store. Etsy owns that store. Like they do the credit cards, they do everything. It's more expensive. But the thing is, Etsy is going to be like, no guns, no this, no that. Well, there's all these people in the country. Like people like I'm being kind of like generic here, but like some woman who hand crochets, blankets in her house and she sells them online. She doesn't have an IT department. She doesn't have programmers. She can't run a website or doesn't want to. She just, wants to sell her shit on Etsy. And so she has an Etsy store. Well, what happened was when some of this stuff started to seize up out of SVB, Etsy I don't know if Etsy wasn't able to process credit cards or if Etsy wasn't able, they probably were able to process them, but Etsy wasn't able to pay anybody. And so you had all these people.
I've been waiting for years for that.
Yeah, you have all these people, like there were stories like this mom in Ohio, she's like, if I don't get my money, I'm not gonna be able to pay my mortgage. She's like, I count on my Etsy store. And it's like, I don't know how many people use Etsy for supplemental income, but I bet you the Biden administration got a number. And
Well, I bet they did too.
it's like holy fucking shitballs, you know?
Well, the point being is that I'm sure the Trump administration would do the same thing as is the Biden administration. They're playing it off. It's like, why don't they just accept and explain the magnitude of this
Who's they?
rather than the current administration?
Current administration didn't do this.
Who do you blame for it then?
Well, right now, I would blame the board of directors at SVB Bank.
The risk management people?
There was no risk management person.
Well, that would narrow it down.
That would narrow it down. There was like no risk management person. So, like, here's the numbers I have from inside of SVB Bank. SVB Bank, it turns out, had a debt to asset ratio of 185 to 1.
Oh.
And it's like, oh, that's interesting.
There's sound management.
There's sound management. So they had a risk management person who left. They didn't fill the position, I think, for 9 months. And then they had some person, and I see contradictory evidence. This person either was brought in or maybe this person only worked in Europe, but they had another risk management person, and she spent a considerable amount of her time. She's a risk management officer. She spent a considerable amount of her time talking about Lesbian Awareness Day and like Gay Pride Month or something, like all this stuff. And it's like, ooh.
All the things that tend to have sound banking principles.
Yes, and that is where the Republicans and Donald Trump and the right is going to be able to drive home this go woke, go broke, like a train right through the middle of this. Now, here's how all of this started. And you and I talked about some of this yesterday, but there's one thing I didn't tell you. Because I told you how like there was like, some venture capitalist guys. I think Peter Thiel was the first one. He got wind that SVB was undercapitalized, and he had, and Peter Thiel's a billionaire. He funded, the new senator here from Ohio, whatever his name is. I didn't want, but he's my Republican senator now. Peter Thiel invests in businesses, and he got wind that SVB had this 185 to 1 debt to asset ratio. He was like, "This is crazy," and he went around to the businesses that he's an angel or he's either an owner or an investor in, and so he's daddy with the money, okay. And when daddy with the money shows up at the companies that he's either owns or invests in, and he tells them, "You're an SVB, you're an SVB, you're an SVB, you're an SVB. I want all of your money out of that bank by 5 o'clock today, or I'm cutting you the fuck off." And that's exactly what happened. And all of a sudden, his company started making big withdrawals from SVB.
A big run on the bank.
And well, not yet. That didn't cause the run. And then he came out publicly after he got his people out. He made some comment because he felt like he needed to tell people the truth. He's like, I think he said something like, "Get your money out of this bank. This is crazy." And then it caused the run. Well, here's the thing. How did Peter Thiel know that SVB was over-leveraged and undercapitalized?
A little birdie.
I can name the little birdie. The little birdie is named Evan Armstrong. And Evan Armstrong I never heard of Evan Armstrong. Like, I'm not going to get in here and pretend like, "Hey, everybody, I fucking do this the whole time." Like, I've figured it out for the past 48 hours. Evan Armstrong is a tech blogger, okay? He's kind of like John 1911, but he's in tech. And guess where Evan Armstrong is based?
I have no idea.
Not in Silicon Valley. Evan Armstrong is in Texas, which is weird. It's like, but
okay.
Or maybe it's not weird. Or like all the people that are like, "Where's John 1911, this armory and all this shit you guys do?" "We're in Ohio." People are like, "Really?" Like, okay. And so Evan Armstrong, apparently my understanding is Evan Armstrong has a newsletter, okay? And he writes about tech financial stuff. It's just like his nerd thing. Like, we like milsurp guns and shooting on our own range, which may seem weird to people. He likes talking about the finances of Silicon Valley. and startups and raising money and A rounds and B rounds and angel investors and all this crap. And he writes this newsletter. And apparently this newsletter is popular among, I would say, the Silicon Valley Illuminati. Okay? Like all of these billionaire investors, they get his newsletter either every day or every couple of days. And he put something in his newsletter like a couple weeks ago, and he was like, Silicon Valley Bank is, I'm paraphrasing, but he basically was like, Silicon Valley Bank is fucked up. That got the attention of Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel looked into it, went to his bank, or went to his investments and said, all y'all got your money in SVB, get it out or I'm cutting you the fuck off. And they were like, yes, daddy. Boom, word got out, caused the run. Now, you and I talked about this yesterday, okay? You and I talked about this yesterday, so it was off pod, so I'm going to try to say this so people understand it. We talked about how SVB had a bunch of U.S. Treasury bonds, you know, at work, let's say 2%, okay? And, you know, if it's a $100 bond, this is just to make it simple. It's a $100 bond at 2%. You know, now you can get the bond, a 3-year bond for like 4.35%, whatever it is. It's in the almost the mid fours. Well, the 2% bond, at face value, it's $100 plus 2 is a $102 bond that is redeemable in 3 years. Well, they had a bunch of this, and they were valuing it on their books as being worth $102. And the reality is it wasn't worth $102. If they had to sell it right now, it'd be worth probably $98 because
102 at full maturity.
102 at full maturity in a couple years. But then here, hold on. If it's a 2% growth interest in 3 years and inflation is at 6% a year, guess what happens, baby? You've lost a lot of money over 3 years. Just even holding the fucking thing. And so now, if you mark to market that and you take that $100 bond at 2% and you want to sell it and you be like, hey, look, you can redeem it in a year. You can redeem it because it's a 3-year term and like, hey, you can redeem this. We'll sell you this bond. And they'll be like, I'll tell you what, we'll say this bond at a 1%. And so we'll split it. And the dudes are going to be like, fuck you. I can buy a 3-year bond at 4.5% almost. Okay, I don't need to buy your bullshit bond with 2%. And so it's like, what would you need to buy the bond? To be like, well, I'll buy the bond. So not at the not at the value, face value of $100. You're going to start taking the points off the principal of the bond, the face value of the bond. Be like, I'll give you $97 for it. And it's like, and that's the mark to market. They were, you know, if I buy, like, if what I just said makes no sense, let me give you an example in guns. I have in the armory my favorite 1911 that I've ever owned, which is saying a lot. It's the Wilson Experior single stack 9mm 1911. It's a traditional 1911 that has been tweaked to run optimally for 9mm. I love this gun. It's a very specialized gun. The gun it's a $4,000 gun. Okay, I paid $4,000 for it. I haven't beat it like I beat my everyday carry gun, and I could go through life and I could put it on the internet on our website or on our pictures up, be like, this is a $4,000 gun. If you're going to buy one of these, it's $4,000. $4,000. This is what the gun. It's a $4,000 gun. Everyone's like, yeah, it must be great to have a $4,000 gun. The second I take that gun and list it on Gunbroker, is a used gun? Is it worth $4,000? Nope.
No.
It's going to be worth $3,800, or depending on the situation, or depending on the market, or why would I pay $3,800 when I can get a brand new one, for $4,000? It's like in Detroit, it's worth fucking $3,100. Like, this is basic economics. And SVB, because it looks like they had a bunch of people that weren't financial people, no risk management people, and were not looking at their balance sheet and marking their books every day properly. They were too busy talking about, putting money into shit that doesn't make money, spending time on stuff that has nothing to do with finances, and then the thing blew up. because there was a run on the bank. My understanding is there were no bad loans, not really, other than like failed startups, which is every day. There was no theft. My understanding, like this isn't like somebody ran off with a bunch of money. This was literally bad business. People that are more concerned with being hippies than being bankers, and they crashed this fucking thing. And that's why Donald Trump's going to be talking about this for the next 2 years.
Oh, he's going to run it into the ground because people are going to, as we know, they vote their pocketbooks, and you issue money, loss, Democrats' fault, however they're going to frame it, he's going to have their attention. And I agree with that theory of how he's going to do it because it will get him airtime.
But if Donald Trump was president, he'd do the exact same thing. He'd be making the argument that we did what we had to do to keep from a systemic, failure across multiple businesses, across multiple economies.
Yes,
I'm just saying. I'm glad you agree. I'm glad you agree, because we have to try not to be quite so partisan.
Oh, stop it! I'm not partisan whatsoever.
I'm just saying. Look. Why do people come to the John 1911 website?
Hopefully for the political side.
Well, the chief political correspondent. People come to our website and listen to our podcast and come to our content because we tell the truth.
That's correct. That's one thing we do is we don't hold back.
We provide high quality content. I mean, minus the cursing, but we're not, didn't say we're family friendly. But we're a high quality content. That's always been when I created this entity, and it is an entity, isn't me. Okay.
Well, I think you need to trade. I think you need to change your trademark of shooting guns and having fun, though. Shooting guns and having fun with no filters.
With no filters. Yeah.
Well,
you know what? But you know what? We've put a lot of thought into the whole shooting guns and having fun, because shooting guns is important. Because shooting guns really is a representation for doing what you say you're going to do, or being about what you're going to be about, right?
Correct.
That's the way I look at it. Like, look, if this was the John 1911 chef website, it'd be about cooking eggs and having fun. Cooking a steak and having fun. Be the best you could be. Don't look, I'm not trying to be like Jerry Michalik. I'm not Jerry Michalik. I'm not Bob Vogel or Rob Vogel, whatever his name is. I'm not these guys. I'm not Mike Seeklander. I don't want to admit personally, like in my heart of hearts, that I never could be. I want to be the best shooter I can be. And I want the people who get our content
and
have
the best fun doing it.
And the have fun part is important because it keeps the elitism away. Janet Yellen getting up there and being a little smug because she's Janet Yellen.
A little? That's an understatement.
Well, to go back to the first date, that makes my dick soft. And it's like, I do not like that. I do not like that super, like, I'm in the club and you're not. And it's like, oh God, I hate that. Like, I mean, it's probably a character flaw of mine. It probably limits me in life. Because there's been groups or people where I've been basically not allowed into the group because I'm like, I don't like you.
No
people.
Filters.
Yeah, I mean, you people aren't nice. Like, I don't think you people aren't nice. Like, I'm just like, yeah, like you may be world class and you may be this, but I'm like, I don't know. I feel like, yeah, it's not. I don't know.
Well, a prime example is like you love shooting guns, but you also like getting in a tractor. It's just fun, having fun, whatever it takes, and there's nothing wrong to live.
That's a good. I'll tell you what, because you and I talked about this. We have just broken since we talked. So we bought that tractor I looked at the numbers. We bought that. Let me look it up here. We bought that tractor in August. Let me see here. The tractor hit the John 1911 range in Massey Ferguson August 25th of 2022. It had 280 hours on it. Okay?
Wow.
And because we bought it used. And
I'm waiting to hear the new hours.
The new hours as of March 12th. So today is what, the 15th or the 16th, I guess, maybe? I don't know. Today's the 16th, I think. We're at 378 hours. So we're almost 100 hours. And so, that's 100 hours in 7 months. And
And ask yourself, have you become quite the operator? I think you have.
dude, oh my God, I forgot to tell you. So so on the 12th, I was out there, I was shooting. Because one thing I've learned, people don't understand this. This is gonna sound ridiculous to people, but you're like, okay, if you're like put in your work first and then shoot as your reward. And I had tried to do that, but what happens is it's such hard work at the John 1911 range, like physically manual labor. And I lift weights, I work out. Like I'm not, I mean, I'm not. You see me, I'm not like the best shape guy, but I'm not someone who's extremely out of shape. But I'm so blown out and destroyed that by the time I'm done putting in the work at the range, I crawl. I'm like I can't fucking shoot shit. Like I may shoot to do some, like if I want to shoot a video or some content, it's pretty rough. So now I instituted it last year. If we are going to shoot and then we're going to put in work, we shoot first because or we end up not shooting or getting on video. So out there shooting, did what we're going to do. It went fantastic too, man. I mean, I just crushed it. I was probably one of the best shooting days I've had in a long time. And the videos be coming. And then it was like, okay, we got a bunch of trees down from the last couple storms. I went out there within an hour. I think it was an hour and 10 minutes. I had cleaned up without having to use a chainsaw. One time, I had cleaned up like 9 large trees. All I had to do was go out with the pallet forks, pick these giant ass trees up, and dump them off the trails to get access to the rest of the range. And I did something on the 12th that I've never done before. I didn't know you could do this with a tractor. I threw a tree.
Yeah,
Have you
why
ever?
can't you? Yes, with the
I've never.
forks. It's not hard.
I didn't. I just never knew I could do that. So what I did, and you probably you know this because I literally discovered this. So I've got this giant tree, and I'm up. I've turned now, and I'm getting off to get this tree. And this tree's, I mean, this tree's, I don't know. This tree could be 40 feet wide. I mean, 40 feet long or longer. And 30 feet, not quite 40 feet, 30 feet, 35 feet. And so I need to get it off the trail. And there happened to be a big pile from the D8 dozer, a big pile kind of like right there on the edge. And I don't want to dump this tree on that pile because it's going to fall back onto the trail and I hit it with the brush hog. So I'm getting as far out to the edge I could. And I lift it up high. Got to be careful because don't want to go flying and go through the cab. And I lowered the pallet forks and it started to slide down the forks and I pulled, whichever way this is to the left, and the pallet forks. So it's sliding down the pallet forks, this tree, and I slammed the pallet forks up, and this tree went sailing off into the woods, and I was like, "Holy shit!" I
You
threw a
had your
tree.
angle of the forks perfect.
Yes, I did it like I was just trying. I was like, ooh, I could get the pallet forks. Like I just want to get it as far away as I can. I was like, but if I raise it up, they'll be out a little bit farther, maybe right at the end. And I just thought maybe instead of dropping it kind of like lower, just get it to go out, right by the edge of the pallet forks. Well, when I
Right.
lifted those pallet forks, basic physics 101, I should know, into engineering school, and that tree flew, I bet close to 10 feet through the air. I was like,
were, were
holy
you
cow.
were you impressed with yourself?
I was impressed. I looked at another person, looked at me, and we were like, did that just happen? It's like, holy cow. Like, it was like, I don't know, was that safe? I'm like, it was awesome. I don't care if it was
it's,
safe.
it's well, and how many times have you picked up the tree and it's unbalanced and starts tipping on you? Lots.
I'm much better at that. The problem I have now is if you'll pick up a tree, if it's an ash tree, and it'll break because it's a dead tree, and then shit starts falling
Right.
everywhere. Um, but
Well,
yeah.
but always remember one thing though, especially since we're supposed to start getting a break in the weather. Where you moved all these trees from, remember to keep that mowed, and it's that much more less work you have. It's more area that you reclaimed. So it's like everything is for something. There's something for everything, and it's just
Yeah,
good to get them out of the way like that.
yeah. Every tree that I have to address
Excuse
is
me.
across a trail. Bless you. Is across a trail.
Oh,
So like, if
really?
a tree falls in the woods, I don't care. Like, no one goes into the woods. I can
Oh,
go
I
in the
thought
woods.
you were moving. I thought you were moving them to reclaim more area.
No, I'm moving trees because we have all these trails, either to get like, okay, like to go to the 500, 600-yard impact zone on the John 1911 range. Like, you're looking at it from like the videos from the shooting position. You see this big kind of like field and some woods behind it. But to get to that 500, 600 yards, you got to go down through woods, go in the trails, and hook up and go through trails to get to that 500, 600-yard impact zone. And I've got three trails to get to that location because, and they're D8 sized wide D8 bulldozer trails because, you come driving through there and with a vehicle or your UTVs or something, and there's trees across these trails, and you're like, fuck. And you can't
Yeah, I
get
got it.
through. So then you go to the backup trail, then you go to the other trail, and it's like I'm constantly, every time the wind blows, running chainsaws. I mean, I am getting chainsaw blades sharpened every 2 or 3 weeks. Like, it's terrible. And so, but the fact I could do this many trees in like a little over an hour and not one time had to use the chainsaw. I mean, it would have taken me, some of these trees are so big, having to cut these things up. I mean, it would have taken me almost, because I got to cut them up in little pieces that I can pick them up and carry them, every tree. It'd taken me 2 weeks to clear all this stuff.
In the tractor, you got it done in an hour.
I got it done in about 70 minutes and never broke a sweat.
Yeah.
God
From
bless
the comfort,
America.
did you have the radio on?
I did, actually. Bluetooth, had the heater going. It's like 32 degrees, so it's cold enough. The ground's, it's drying out the
And
ground. So,
I'll bet you had such a smile of confidence, wondering to yourself, why the hell didn't I get this earlier? Didn't you? Yes.
everybody they say to themselves, like, when they get a tractor, they ask themselves, how did I ever live without a tractor? And I always thought that was kind of a trope. And I one of those dudes be like, I could have a tractor, be like, how did I ever live without a tractor? Oh my God. Like, I mean, look, I work out,
Well,
okay? And there
I
were
don't want to
days,
say who told you so.
oh,
I won't
everybody's
mention
told
my
me that.
name.
But dude, there'd be days that I would be lifting so many trees, and some of these trees are huge. I'd be lifting so many trees and be like, yeah, I'm not lifting weights today because I'm gonna be out there lifting trees all day. It's like, and it's a workout, and it's like, so hopefully I don't get tractor fat. But yeah. But
Well, not only that, not only the moving the tree part, in the spring and summer, the mowing part, how much
well,
effort and
yeah.
time you save. It's like it's unbelievable, isn't it?
Oh, it's gonna be great because the thing is too, I'll be able to run. I'll be running the 8 foot brush hog to cut all the ranges, all the trails, all the fields. And the thing is, I can keep pallet forks on the front. I can literally be going down somewhere and be like, oh shit, there's a tree here. Or there's something in the way. Now I can't cut. And it turns into I now have to start either, you know, clean it up. And now I'm like, well, fuck
I'll
me.
just move it.
I'll just pick it. I'll just turn off the brush hog, lift, deal with this thing on the front, and then with the pallet forks down and cutting again. It's great, and so it gives me more time to shoot and do other stuff. So, but hey, I was pretty down on Silicon Valley Bank, and I want to talk about. I want to mention two things, two business
Go ahead.
stories that are worth mentioning, and they're diametrically opposed, but they're feel good stories if you're political. But they're stories in relation to the idea of shit's got to pay for itself or it's not viable. So the first one is, have you ever seen commercials for a cell phone company called Mint Mobile? And it has an actor named Ryan Reynolds in it. He's a pretty well-known actor, and he does these commercials. He's like, I'm actually an owner in Mint Mobile, and blah, 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 blah. Have you ever seen any of these commercials?
Yes, and I know where you're going with this of the how they were just bought. So go ahead.
He owns 25% of Mint Mobile, and he's invested in other things. He's invested in, I think, some kind of soccer club in England. He is invested in some kind of alcohol company,
Well,
and that seemed,
Yeah, he's Canadian.
I don't know if he's Canadian or not, but he's a Hollywood guy. And he's married to the actress. Like they're I mean like, but he invests, and he bought in this little kind of, I'm gonna be honest, like kind of like this ghetto cell phone company. Like I don't know what's to put it, like this super cheap. Like I think you could get cell phone service for $15 a month, and it's like
Right.
wow, like that's great. And well, they were just bought by T-Mobile, which is like the lowest tier of the major cell phone companies. Like if you had asked me, is there anyone lower than T-Mobile? I'd have been like, no, T-Mobile's the lowest. No, there's Mint and maybe some others. T-Mobile bought them for $1.35 billion. And so I think they're saying he probably got like a three.
Million or
I'm sorry,
billion?
billion, 3.15
Yeah,
billion.
I was going to say I read the
I'm
story this
sorry,
morning.
not three. It's 1.35 billion.
Correct.
1.3. I don't know what I said. 1,350,000,000. So they're saying, he gets roughly 300 some million of that. And in this economy and with some issues like the past couple of years, companies have been wanting, they can grow with acquisitions. It's money. If money was cheap, you can purchase and sell and buy, and different, certain economies you grow your customer base, other companies you grow by buying your competitors. And so he's a winner. And so if he had lost his money, he shouldn't get bailed out. He took a risk, he gets the win. Good for him. Now another story I think that is worth mentioning, because this guy gets all the press and gets all the girls and gets all the love from all the media because he's a do-gooder and he's a hippie and he's a liberal and he's all this stuff. His name is Richard Branson, and he owns Virgin,
Virgin Atlantic.
yeah, Virgin Atlantic. So he's a daredevil guy, does all this stuff. Well, you got the Elon Musk goes to space and Jeff Bezos goes to space. They have different programs. Whatever it is. Like I think Elon Musk wants to go to Mars. Like whatever, sure, why not? And I guess Jeff Bezos wants just to send people in orbit. Like I'm
Right.
not like for money. I'm not even certain like what's going on there. But it's cool. Like whatever, it's cool. Well, this Richard Branson guy, he has his space program called Virgin Atlantic Orbit, right? And
Yes,
so,
he
and so
does.
he's the pride of the United Kingdom, I guess, right? And we've got it too, and we're going to do whatever. Well, Virgin Atlantic Orbit announced this past week that they are, quote, pausing operations and are looking for investors. So what does that mean? That means Virgin Atlantic is a passion project for Mr. Branson, doesn't make money, and this economic downturn and this economic environment, maybe you need to concentrate on your core businesses that make money and not waste money on your hobbies. And that comment is not only directed at Richard Branson, that's directed at Silicon Valley and Silicon Valley Bank and a lot of the stuff that Donald Trump is going to make hay about for the next 2 years. It is a political
Yeah.
statement and people don't even realize it.
Yep. Well, you watch the big elitist type buyouts and mergers or whatever. I'm actually closer to home, been watching with very much interest, especially with all the derailments in Ohio. But now Canadian National is buying out Kansas City Southern Railroad. Well, it's on paper, you think it's just two railroads, but the implications from that with traffic studies and things like that, see, I get more into that, is insane. So now there's people trying to block the merger in Congress
Well, I
because
think
it
is
has to go through the FRA,
what's the FRA?
Federal Railroad Association, which
Is
is a government.
is that also? Do they have to get a CFIUS approval as well?
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
Um,
yes.
I'm not aware of that one, but fun fact, I have a train story for you.
Well, you live in Ohio, you have two of them.
What do you know? What? Tell me which ones we have, because I know of one. What's the other one? Name them.
I'm talking about the two derailments.
Oh, the two derailments. Okay, yeah, that's a different type of story. So, the city of Cincinnati owns a railroad company, apparently.
I did not know that.
I occasionally hear it. There's a big rail yard in Cincinnati, and apparently they own a rail, and maybe it's called the Cincinnati something rail line. It's a rail line, and I guess whatever company. And I don't know if it runs from Cincinnati somewhere down south. Maybe it runs to Danville, Kentucky. Maybe it runs to Georgia. I literally think they bought it or put it in like right after the Civil War, and they've had this thing forever. And so apparently they have an offer to sell it. Like I think they get $2 million a year in leasing rights or something. However, all this, I'm not even sure what it is. They get X amount of money a year every year, and it's you can count on it. Like it's almost like an asset on your books. You can count on this money every year from this railroad that you own. Like in a bank, like a bond or something. Well, they have an offer to sell it, and I don't know if it's $2 billion to buy it or something, or but they're looking to sell it to somebody. Another railroad company wants to actually own it, so they don't have to pay, and that's been a big debate. But I don't. There's not a CFIUS. There's not a CFIUS review because it's not an international sale. It'd be to an American railroad company. But I guess the FRA. Federal. You saw what do you call the FRA? I never heard of it. The FRA is called the
Federal Railroad
This,
Association.
is it F or is it F?
Well, or it's I know it's like the FAA, but for railroads, FRA.
Well, is it called? I'm just curious. Is it called the
It's called the FRA.
Is it called the FRA? Is it or called the FRRA Railroad? Is the R one?
No, it's just FRA.
The three letters like
R.
TWA or TVA,
Right.
Tennessee Valley Authority. I
Yeah.
mean, actually, like personally, like I'm not a big choo-choo train guy, but like from a national security and national power and military and ability to logistics, I do pay attention to railroads. And I know that when when the Department of Defense was cutting back on the Army's railroad division, and I think they run that school. Like a lot of people don't realize the Army has its own railroad guys.
Yes, they do.
And I think they run them up in. Aren't they based in Wisconsin? But they, because they're railroads, they can. But they have a school, and they were cutting some of that back because they were cutting a lot.
It's Fort McCoy,
What state is that in?
Wisconsin.
I got. There was gonna be a quiz, and I didn't even study, and that kind of worried me, and because you need to start running shit on railroads or rebuilding railroads. You need people to know how to operate railroads. And, if your main customer in a war is the Army, and it's particularly moving heavy equipment and entire divisions to the coast so they can, on roll on, roll off roll off ships, railroads are freaking important.
Yes, they are.
I'm glad they still have it because they were talking about shutting the whole thing down, which I wasn't a fan of. So yeah, but I didn't know that the Canadians were trying.
Well, what are your two stories besides the Army story? What's the other one?
No, I think that was
The Cincinnati Railroad.
the Cincinnati Railroad story.
Oh, okay. Did you see the video of the Russian fighter hit our drone?
I just saw the actual video this morning.
Isn't that something?
And looking at the video, it's because the way it's described, you almost think like the plane came up and intentionally tapped it with like an edge of one of its control surfaces, which would be very sketchy,
Right.
And it looks like it's coming in to dump fuel, and these fucking Russians, they fucking ran into it.
Well, did you see what Miley said in the press conference?
Who said?
General Miley?
No.
He said,
I don't like Miley.
No, either do I. He actually said he's not sure it was intentional. It just could have been accidental.
I'm looking at the video, and it
That's
looks
damn intentional to
No,
me.
no. I disagree. I'm looking at the video. That's accidental.
You think so? To get that close when those jets have radar. Oh, something's 100 feet in front of you.
What are you talking about? The Russian fighter planes harassed this drone for 40 minutes. They were
Exactly.
they
And
were
to get that close, you don't think is intentional?
no, you don't. Okay, we're not. Again, your political mind and your partisanship is clouding your judgment.
Okay, and my eyes deceive me.
No, okay, hold on. The Russians were buzzing this thing and dumping fuel on it to be dick faces. Because I've said this before. And I say this the exact same way. Russians. I took Russian in college. They were the enemy back during the Cold War. I know Russians. Okay, Russians are insecure assholes. That's the best way to describe them. They're insecure and they're assholes. And so they do this goofy shit. And what they were doing is they were buzzing that fucking thing, they were dumping fuel on it. And obviously, on the last run to come in, you see the plane dumping the fuel and it's trying to come right in front of it.
Oh,
And
I thought that was a contrail.
that's fucking
I
fuel,
did.
dude. They're dumping
Oh,
fuel.
I did not
Uh-huh.
know that.
And
Okay,
and
I
and
stand
and what
corrected.
fucking happened is he got too goddamn close to the fucking thing and he hit it. And this is and so technically it was an accident. I mean, it was accident meaning I don't believe he wanted to hit it. I think he's a fucking moron and he's lucky he didn't lose his own airplane. We had a similar thing happen when George W. Bush was president. And this happened before 9. This happened before. Yeah, this was before 9. I think it was before 9/11. It was that spring. I think it was in June of 2001, maybe. We had a P-3 Navy surveillance plane in the South China Sea, and the Chinese kept fucking with it. They had two fighters around it, and they were buzzing it, getting right in front of it. You know, all the typical stuff you see where they get real close. And
Right.
the one pilot, at one point, he was, if I recall, what he did is he was maybe down low and he wanted to pull up in front of the, like right in front of the nose of the air of the P-3, which is basically it's a prop plane. It's a giant, I think it's a four engine prop plane, propeller driven, like look like a kind of like a DC-3. I know it's not DC-3, but it looks like a little like airliner with propellers. And
Like a weather plane.
well, those are normally C-130s, but it's a different airplane than that. It doesn't have a ramp on the back.
All right.
It's not transport. And so anyway, this Chinese pilot, he contacted the frickin' nose cone. He called it short, and his plane contacted the nose cone of that P-3, and so ripped the nose cone off. And that Chinese airplane, the pilot was killed, and he went down with his fighter. I think it was a J7 maybe fighter, and the nose cone was ripped off this P-3, and they were losing stability control of the aircraft, and and again, it's a spy airplane. It's basically a signals intelligence gathering thing run by the Navy. Might also be associated with some other agencies too, depending on what they're doing. I mean, if they're doing something, who knows what they're doing. But they decided to divert so they don't crash at sea to Hainan Island, which is the big island off southern China. It's a big militarized island. I think it's bigger than Taiwan, and it's kind of between where China and Vietnam meet. There's Hainan Island. It's a big giant military base there. I mean, military bases, and they diverted and had to land in China, and so and this was considered the biggest intelligence loss since probably the Walker spy scandal with the submarines with the Russians, because the Chinese got access to all the surveillance equipment and what we could do and the data we're doing and how we were doing it from the airplane. And like the crew literally before they landed, they have procedures. I think they were trying to jettison stuff into the water, and I know for a fact they were taking fire axes and smashing equipment in the back of the plane before they landed.
Well, funny you should say that, because also on the news today, um, supposedly, did our drone go down?
Yes, it went off. It crashed off the coast
Right,
of Romania.
because they said the Russians are scrambling to try to recover it.
Yeah,
So they want the same thing.
I
They would
heard that.
love
I
to
heard
get.
this morning there were Russian ships on scene.
Oh, really?
Hmm. It's apparently, I believe, and look, I've seen reports of the graphics where they say this plane or where this incident took place, and it looks like they say it's in international waters in the Black Sea, so that would be more than 12 miles off the coast. And so it's not right up on the shore. But the reality is, I don't know where in the Black Sea this thing happened. I don't know where this thing is. And so, I don't know what's up. I will say this. Look, I mean, the Russians, Chinese and Russians have grabbed Reaper drones before. They've been shot down over Syria. They've crashed in places. I think there's been some that have crashed in Libya. Like, I don't think there's anything in a Reaper drone. I could be wrong. It could be upgraded, great sensors on it. Could be something in there that we don't want the Russians to have access to. Could be, probably, maybe communications, satellite scrambling. I mean, who knows? I don't know. I'm a dude sitting in Ohio. But I'm not as worried about them getting that Reaper, that drone, as I was about that P3 the Chinese grabbed 20 years ago.
You would think with all the technology we have that there would be a self-destruct mechanism in that, and just for instances like that.
Well, okay. It's funny you should mention that. It's not publicly really acknowledged. But do you remember the Francis Gary Powers U2?
U2, yeah, I sure do.
The U2 incident, and that was over Russia.
Yes.
And that embarrassed the Eisenhower administration greatly. So Francis Gary Powers, we were flying over Russia, looking at their stuff.
We had 80,000 feet,
or 90,000, 110,000, and so they had figured out a way to somehow get a missile up high enough. Like, it was very common when the U-2s would be flying over Russia, missiles would be fired at them. Airplanes would try to get up to them, climb as high as they could and fire a missile. Then they would stall because they can't get that high, and they would fall. Like, all these crazy stories. So Francis Gary Powers. So Major Francis Gary Powers, I think he was an NSA or CIA employee. I can't remember technically what he was. But when the plane went down, Eisenhower came out. Like, the Russians had said something like, what the fuck? We have this airplane. We did something. And Eisenhower came out because he was told the plane's destroyed, the pilot's dead, and don't worry about it. And so Eisenhower came out and said all this stuff like, yeah, nothing to see here. I can't remember exactly what he says, but basically he was told by the other government agencies that the Russians won't have much. We're fine. We have deniability. And then the Russians showed up, and they got a Major Francis Gary Powers alive on trial. Yeah.
Walking in custody.
And talking about all this stuff. And this greatly embarrassed, I think it was Khrushchev at the time, greatly embarrassed Eisenhower, pissed him the fuck off. And why if it was the CIA, I think the CIA was operating the aircraft, why was the CIA so confident that Francis Gary Powers, the pilot of the plane, was dead?
Don't know.
The rumor was, and apparently the U-2 pilots either knew this or believed it, that if they ever hit the ejection sequence in the U-2 aircraft, that the plane would actually self-destruct. So what Francis Gary Powers did is he cracked open the cockpit and then fell out of the aircraft. I don't believe he ejected, because this has never been thoroughly discussed or addressed or knocked down. Just ignore it. But how is he alive? Well, because was there explosives? Was there explosives in the aircraft? Because it's so super secret that if the pilots suspect they're explosives, are they not going to they're not going to use it? They don't want to blow themselves up. Like, you open up this whole argument like this. Like, what are we into here? What comes first, the chicken or the egg? The decision to do it, to not to do it, explode or not explode?
That could have been. That could have been. If you've ever ridden a jet ski or a quad, you got that long string with it when the key comes out. They could have had something like that and would have blown up when he's gone.
Every rocket fired from NASA has a self-destruct sequence. Every single one, because if it fucks up and doesn't go out over the ocean and then starts flying over the country, over Iowa, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, they want to be able to blow it up into pieces as soon as possible so it doesn't fall down as a giant thing somewhere else. Or, like, let's say it, okay, or the other situation, let's say it's a giant Saturn V rocket and they torch it off in Florida, and they lose control of it. They lose positive control of it, and it's just sailing and sailing away at an angle, and it's heading towards Africa somewhere. And they're like, oh, fuck, we don't want the Russians to blow it up over the ocean. Like, there's all these reasons on why you would have this. But the U2 thing, I don't know. That was never answered, never addressed. I think, whether people come out and say, that, there's no explosives in the U2, if that's true, why did Francis, if I remember correctly, why did the pilot of the U2 aircraft not actually use the ejection seat? If I remember correctly. I could have this all wrong. I don't want to be like Joe Rogan and put conspiracy theories out there that I don't know. I may be misremembering. I didn't research this. This is just off the top of my head. So,
Yeah.
Hey, I want to tell you something. I thought you would find it interesting. So, do you remember when? Because you were gone. You were out of the office, and there were the Americans that went down to Mexico for the tummy tuck, and they got kidnapped and killed, and all that.
Yes, I seen that.
And then everyone went bonkers over this one, and people tried to make hay out of things like because Mexico is extremely dangerous. It's more dangerous than Syria. It always has been. More dangerous than Afghanistan.
Yeah, until they found out why they were there.
Well, wait a minute. Hold on. You've got your political biases going. So, hold on.
Go ahead.
I'm going to, okay. So these people, it was said that they went down for a tummy tuck, and then one of them got stopped at the border. Because they didn't have ID. And it's like, okay, that's kind of stupid, but whatever. Now, what they did, these people were literally stopped right across the border. Like, they were so close to the border that they were on film still, okay? And, they're innocent Americans. They got kidnapped and murdered, all right? And it didn't take too long because the volume got turned to 11 real fucking quick. And the volume got turned up, and then somebody decided to do a NICS check, or NCIC check, on these 4 people that went across the border. One of them had a drug conviction, some had whatever, and they had prior arrests. And they're like, they went down there for drugs. And I was like, I'll be honest with you, I thought that was a real shitty story because we don't know if that's true. My understanding is they went for a tummy tuck. I don't believe anybody said they went down there to buy drugs and to bring drugs back. They were drug muling. And even if they were, the dirtiest of dirty people, they were coming across that border. They were innocent. They were caught up with these cartels in the middle of some gunfight. They didn't deserve that. Okay? So the media, and I think the media that came out and tried to say these people are dirtbags were doing it to diffuse so there isn't a big push to go into Mexico from the right. Okay? And then because something happened with this incident that hasn't happened in forever with Mexico. Like, they go across the border, this thing happens, it's on video. The entire country, this becomes a national news story. Americans get killed and disappear in Mexico almost every day.
Correct.
Never makes the news. Nobody cares. They should care because it's terrible. And I've done stories where I said, we're going to go into Operation Mexican Freedom is coming. Okay. It got to be so bad that the Mexican cartel rounded up the 5 people that kidnapped and killed some of these Americans drop them off tied up with a vehicle in some place so the local federales could find them with a note of apology. We're sorry we did this, we're sorry what happened, we didn't mean to do it, this isn't how we do business at the cartels and whatever. Literally an apology. Now, that got some news and got some traction. And then, the whole idea, everything about Mexico, just kind of immediately the gas was pulled out of it. Between those guys getting rounded up on the Mexican cartel and writing an apology, and then some news media outlets trying to convince us that these people are dirtbags and they deserved what happened to them, which I think is shitty. Okay? Everybody missed the real story here. People that tell you and tell the listener at home that we can't do anything in Mexico, that we couldn't, affect, we couldn't get real serious with the Mexican drug cartels. Remember something. When the American people, when this became a national story and it got turned to 11 and Democrats and Republicans united in outrage for about 4 days, the Mexican cartel said, holy fucking shit, the Americans are coming. And they rounded up the 5 Pablos and turned them over to the cops with an apology letter. If the Mexican cartels are that afraid of the Americans coming in, real Americans, with guns and motivation to fix your fucking problems, Mexico, that's something American citizens need to remember. And it's something they need to tell their politicians. I am not advocating invading Mexico. But all I'm saying is the idea that we can't deal with the international drug cartel, international criminal enterprise that is involved in more violence than the shit in Syria. You telling me we can't fucking do drone strikes in Mexico? Get the fuck out of here. I mean, fuck you. I mean, literally, we could run Predator drones with Hellfire missiles with good intelligence, and we don't even have to be expeditionary. We can run them from our side of the border. Miss me with this whole idea that we can't. Our hands are so tied in America, we can't deal with this. It's I don't know. Apparently, the Mexican drug cartels were scared enough that they turned their own brothers in on it.
Yeah,
just saying.
It's too bad. It's too bad that we don't have that much fortitude to address the border crisis.
Yeah. Hey, I got a hunting story for you.
Go ahead.
Do you like zebras?
Is this on the police blotter?
No, this is not. It could be a police blotter, but it's not a police blotter. Do you like zebras?
I know where you're going with this. Go ahead. Yes, I heard it, and I didn't want to laugh, but I did.
No, go. But then if you know it, tell it, because I talk too much. I want you to talk. People miss you.
Apparently, was this in California?
No, this was in Ohio.
Oh, in Ohio, that's right. Apparently, a guy had a pet zebra. And correct me when I'm wrong on this, because I was reading it between everything I had going on. Somehow the zebra got loose. Did it attack the owner? Or the owner couldn't be found or something? And the police were called. Well,
go on.
The zebra somehow had an attitude. And
there's the title of the podcast right there.
Zebra has an attitude. The zebra had a pissed off attitude. Well, I don't know if it was animal control, the police, whatever agencies were involved.
It was the sheriff. It was the local sheriff's office.
Right. SO. They tried to somehow corral this thing. And didn't the zebra attack the deputies? And the deputies ended up putting it down.
So I've got, so this in Ohio.
Those are my cliff notes.
Apparently, in Ohio, a zebra is not considered a wild animal. You don't need a wild animal license. I was like, okay. And for people that don't know, zebra are vicious, shitty animals. They're terrible. They're terrible animals.
I did not know that. I always thought they were like the Dr. Seuss things. Nice
and that again, that's the Disneyfication of wild animals. You go up to a zebra kick your fucking ass. A zebra will fucking hurt you. They're like, think of it like the meanest, most juiced out, roid raging horse you could possibly imagine. Like, they are just terrible animals. Like, zebras successfully fight off leopards and cheetah and lions all the time. Like, think about that. Like, yeah, I think your average horse could do that. A zebra can do it. So apparently this guy had a zebra, and I guess the zebra had an attitude and decided it was in a, wherever, like the zebra's in a field, and the zebra attacked the owner so badly.
Wow.
The owner thought his arm, like it about bit his arm off. Like I could see him. He still had an arm hanging, but he had long sleeve shirt on, and he literally was like, it fucking just destroyed my arm. So he called 911. He's in the middle of a field. So the local Pickaway County Sheriff's Office shows up, and there's dash cam footage and there's body cam footage of this. And I've seen footage up to about to where they're walking the guy to the ambulance. The deputies are out. One deputy's got a shotgun. Another guy's got a handgun. I don't know how I feel about a handgun against the goddamn zebra. But then, they're looking at the zebra, like the zebra's turning to them, and they're looking at the zebra, and then they cut the video. So if you are in Ohio, or you have access to the body cam footage of the zebra shoot, please send it to podcast@john1911.com. Public record, sunshine law. I don't want to get you in trouble, but the second it can be made public, I want it. I want to see that. That's got to hit the website. I just thought that was an incredible story.
Yes, they put the zebra down, and yes, it did attack the guy, but you took the zebra out of its natural environment. So whatever pissed him off, the zebra, I don't know, but in a way, I actually sort of feel sorry for the zebra.
The zebra got up that morning and looked at his 401k at the
That's
bank.
right.
He was like, the zebra
Because
was
he
like,
had his
what the
bank out in
fuck?
Silicon Valley Bank.
Yeah, the zebra was like, what the fuck? I'm supposed to be retired.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna go bite a guy's arm off,
I am,
just
so
for good measure.
yeah, the
Oh
zebra
my
lost his
God.
ass on Silicon Valley Bank. We had a story. It was sent to us by Chris, and I want to include it into this because it's hilarious. So this is from the New York Post, and I'm going to read, see if I have it. Do they have it? Oh, here we go. So, Wagner in Ukraine, right? The PMC group that's run by
Right.
the Russians. And, Wagner's been getting it done in Ukraine, but they're running out of people. They were recruiting murderers and killers and all this and they're just getting mowed down. Apparently the Wagner people are to the point now, they're just doing wave attacks. Like the Chinese did in North Korea, like during the Korean War. Like, when the Choson Reservoir, like they were just doing wave attacks where like they didn't even have guns. Like they probably had guns, but you know what I mean? It was like just crazy suicide attacks. Well, Wagner's running out of people. And so they've run out of prisoners. They've run out of volunteers. And so they are now running a recruiting commercial on Pornhub. So let me read this to you. This is from the New York Post. This is
Now
courtesy
you
of
have my
Chris.
attention.
Russia Wagner's mercenary group is so hard-pressed to replenish its ranks depleted by months of bloody battles in Ukraine that it has turned to Pornhub to recruit soldiers. Let me continue. The private army founded by Yevgeny Prigozhin, a close ally of Russian President Vladimir Putin, has placed a highly suggestive ad on the popular porn site urging male viewers to stop pleasuring themselves and instead apply for a job at Wagner. In the commercial, a blonde woman wearing red lipstick is seen twirling an oversized lollipop in her mouth, while a husky female voice purrs in the background, quote, "We are the fucking coolest private army in the world. We are recruiting Russian fighters from all regions of Russia. Don't whack off. Go work for PMC Wagner." And then a phone number appears on the screen. And I have the commercial. This is real. I mean, somebody made the commercial. I don't know if it's real. It could be a counter psyop thing, but it's hilarious. Insecure assholes, Russia. Anytime if you want anything the Russians do, whether how the behavior of the ambassador in the United States, the behavior of Putin, the behavior of a pilot, the behavior of some Russian somewhere, and you're like, why the fuck? All you have to ask yourself, put the equation of insecure plus an asshole equals that behavior, and that explains everything that how these people act. They're terrible. And if you're Russian, I'm sorry. If you're of Russian descent, I'm sorry. But also, I'm true. I'm right. I'm right. I'm right. you know.
Yes. Yes. Detente has not been reached on this channel.
Yeah. So, couple other things. So, we were looking for cars and looking for, we're always looking for stuff. Did your son had a the Lamborghini, right? And
Correct.
he sold that, right? Can we say that he doesn't have.
For the capital gain.
Yeah, for the capital gain. So, he'll tell you what, he sold well, right? Considering the economy.
Oh, yes.
Hey, he gets the win, right? Hey, people get the win. So I'm a Countach guy, but and I've told the story how I didn't buy the Countach when I had the chance, and probably the biggest fail of my life on purchasing, and that it influences me purchasing things now. Like if I want something and I can afford it, and I just personally want it, I will buy it now because if I want it, somebody will want it later. If I legit, truly like that's my Halo car or Halo gun, and I have a chance to buy it, I'll buy it now because I won't. Because if I don't, I'll never get a chance to buy it. X Rod Stewart 1989 Lamborghini Countach 25th anniversary edition. This is a black on gray car. I think it's a black on something. So it's a Countach, and it's a 25th anniversary, which isn't considered the most desirable of the Lamborghinis, of the Countaches. Like some people want the early ones, the downdrafts and some of the other stuff. Like the 25th anniversary was very late because they made these cars for 25 years. This car sold for $550,000. A 25th anniversary.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty. It's like, and it has some kick in the price because, or
Oh,
boost in the
who owned
price
it? Right.
because of who owned it. But like I'm telling you, dude, Lamborghini Countach, it's going to be $1 million car. There's some of them that are trading the early ones that are considered a little bit more pure, like the Quattro Porte or Periscopos, and they don't have all the wings and stuff on them. They're $700,000 now already.
Really?
They're going to be $1 million. That's going to
But
be a car that is going to be $1 million, and I'll never be able to touch. I won't be able to justify buying it.
well,
I could have bought one for $40,000, or maybe it was 60. Mm-hmm.
that is a 1/30th of what the new ones go for if you would have bought that at 40 grand.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. But so also I guess um, because I put a thing up about maybe we should get a Unimog to pull the tractor. I was like, Unimog would be cool. We could use it on the range and we could drive it
Right.
around. And so we got a link from a viewer, but he didn't tell me I could use his name, so I'm not going to give your name. A 2004 Unimog 500 was on Bring a Trailer, which is where the Countach was, and 2004, and it sold for $162,000.
Holy shit.
And it's like, holy shit! If I can get
Oh, did
162,
you, speaking of that, when you were talking about that and the deuce and a half, and I gave you all the legal type DOT stuff, did you find any of that information interesting?
you know what? We had a conversation off pod about getting a vehicle big enough to move the tractor. And the long story short, because I don't want to bore the listener, is I don't want to get a CDL if I don't have to, because I don't want to have to get another government agency involved in operations of the John 19M range. You know what I mean? It's
Correct.
like, no, there's no reason for to have to operate a CDL just for this stupid truck is like whatever. I mean, I'm just gonna probably sit on the Tundra. It's got 185,000 miles. It's going to be 200, 189,000. And the thing is, that truck's going to last forever. But if I ever have to replace that Tundra, I'll probably end up having to get a bigger truck. But I got to be honest with you. Like I've been looking around. I looked, over the winter at like Ford 350s and 450s. I looked at the Denali's 3500s. It may have been 2500s. And like you look at these vehicles, and then you get on the internet and you see like they're having all these engine problems and all these
That they are.
issues. And I'm just like, I'm not trying to be a dick because like I don't know anything about what the hell do I know about diesel? I have one diesel vehicle. It's a tractor. But I'm like, you assholes haven't figured out how to make a goddamn truck that, like, oh yeah, the whatever on the whatever Ford is going out 36,000 miles. And it's like, really? Like, I mean, dude, these Tundras, again, they're not diesel. These Tundras that I've been running, like, they're not even a drop of oil out of these things. I've got to probably have 500,000 miles total on this type of engine. Like, just taking it for oil changes and, do the schedule like, oh, you know what, your water pump's getting old, you better change that. Oh, you better change the timing belt because, you're sorting out, just follow the schedule. Not a lick of trouble. Not a lick of trouble. And it's like, you look at this and I'm like, why would I spend over $100,000 on a brand new fancy diesel truck that literally could break down on me at any time?
Yep.
And that's why I was like, fuck it, I'll get a Unimog.
Yeah, I don't blame you on that. And if the tractor does need service versus getting your own truck, trailer, CDL, all the other stuff, if your tractor does need service, it's worth it just to pay the pickup and delivery charge for no headaches or hassles. Trust
Yeah,
me on that.
we got the guys, the bulldozer guys, because they run heavy equipment business that did our range work. They're not that far from us. Like, as a matter of fact, when I'm driving to the range, I literally drive in front of their business every day. And so, like, I see the D8 dozer. They've got cranes. They got all that stuff. And it's like, I know they're busy, and I don't know if they would be like, hey, could you guys run our tractor down to the
They
Massey
would.
Ferguson dealer? They charge me, and it might not be as convenient as on my time, but you know what? They do it. Eventually, it get done. And so that's what it's
Exactly.
coming down to. And it's just like, the dream of being able to move the tractor myself because I like to do stuff myself
Well,
is.
I awakened you to quite a lot of rules and regs that go along with that.
Yeah, and also you and I talked about this off pod. Every time I go to the range, I drive in front of. As a matter of fact, every time I go to the range and every time I have to go to the Massey Ferguson dealer, each way, like then it's different ways. But like I drive to the range, I drive in front of I drive in front of two. As a matter of fact, two DOT or whatever state way stations.
Right.
I
Right.
drive in front of one that's run by the state, and I drive one that's run for agriculture. And then
And,
going.
and they'll tell you to pull around.
Yeah,
That
and the
means they're
thing
going to do a
is,
level
you
one,
know,
two, or three on you.
and the thing is, it's like and this is where I'm kind of biting myself in the ass. It doesn't matter. I can get to a point where I spend so much money and I buy stuff that's so nice that there's no way that even if it has farm plates on it or something, that they're not going to be like there's
Pull
no
around
way.
back.
Yeah,
Trust me.
they're basically gonna. If I drive by one of those, they're gonna literally pull me. They're gonna be like, "What the fuck was that just went by?" There's no way that's not commercial, and you know what I mean. That's not a what. And they're gonna fucking. There's no way to do this and have it not turn into a shit show. And then you
Right.
factor in I'm always going to have NFA items, thousands of rounds of ammo, tons of firearms, weapons in the vehicles,
and, and farm plates.
yeah, and it's just going to be disaster. And the thing is too, like the whole farm thing, the John 1911 range is not a farm. So, like, for example, so we don't operate as a farm. We're not taxed as a farm. When I bought that tractor for the John 1911 range, I paid straight up retail sales tax on that.
Oh, okay.
Uh-huh. Because, I'm not fucking around here. This is not, I have to be legit. Look, I'm going to say this. All these people that feel like that Donald Trump, because he's a rich guy in New York, and they're going to get his taxes, and they're going to get him for cheating on his taxes in New York, and they got 20 years of his taxes, which is crazy insane, mind you. It's super illegal. How does someone not go to jail for that? I don't know. But if you have never dealt with a big city and taxes, I have had more issues with a big city's tax department than I've ever had with the IRS. Like, just fucking with me. And the idea that if you're watching the news, especially if you're a Democrat, and you think Donald Trump runs all those businesses in New York City, the most aggressive city tax department probably on the planet. And he's getting away with anything. Look, he may write off stuff and do things that you don't like, but there is going to be zero in those taxes that he's cheating on. Like they're not going to be hiding shit and like making shit. They can, the only thing you could get would be interpretation. No, this is a write-off and this isn't, or this is a whatever and this isn't. But there's not going to be like straight up like, if you just audit, you're going to find all this cheating, because it doesn't work like that. He gets audited every year.
He has people on the payroll to fix
these rich guys in these big cities, they get audited. I remember one year I got audited by a city. This was years ago. I got audited by a city, like whatever time. Like it was like maybe in the winter. They sent me some nasty audit, and I went in there and did all this stuff. And 2 months later, they send me another letter. Yeah, we're going to audit you again. And I literally sent them a response back. And I said, and I quote, "You assholes can wait to April 15th like everybody fucking else. Fuck you." Literally, that's what I said.
Yeah,
in writing. And you know what happened? They waited. Because the thing is, the IRS, the IRS doesn't really fuck with people, like just to fuck with them. But these cities,
by sending $5,000 demand letters.
Yeah, well, that was the state of Ohio for 3 cents. Yeah, so you listened to the podcast, you heard about that, huh? So we owed the state of Ohio $2.70 in sales tax that somehow we collected but didn't get paid. But we fucking paid it. And then, they hit us with interest and penalties of 3 cents. And then they charged us $1 to fucking pay it. And it's like, this is the insanity that you deal with city and state tax people. They're just fucking bonkers. And, the idea of like, if I had to deal with the city of New York's tax department, if like some Democrats are like, "Marky, we're going to get your taxes and we're going to burn you to the fucking ground," I'd be like, "You wish." I'm like, "But I ain't scared of you." Like, fucking, I deal with New York City tax department every day. You can suck my dick, you loser. You don't know what you're talking about.
Vultures.
Vultures. So, anyway, let's do the police blotter and
sounds good.
Do the police blotter and toss it, because I got a hard out with the attorneys in 10 minutes. So, first thing is, this is going to come local. We have a local story, Cincinnati, Coleraine Townships, and it's a gun story. And this one, when I tell you the details, you're going to be like, how does this happen? Benjamin Hardwick, 23, was charged for shooting a gun when he was in a restroom. And apparently, it looks like it might have been a negligent discharge. And the gun in question, I don't know the gun, but its caliber was .357. So you can pretty much surmise it was a revolver. And it's like, ooh, how did that happen? Did he drop it? Was he fucking with it? What happened? Now, here's the really bad part. The bullet exited out of the confines of the bathroom. It was at some kind of restaurant or facility and hit somebody sitting in a booth.
Holy shit.
And so that's important.
Even going through the walls of .357 is still going to have impact.
Yeah, and and so my point is, the whole point of that story is, but for the grace of God, there goes I. The next story is, there was a guy he's a murder suspect, and he was arrested. Let me see if I can find the murder suspect. Hold on. Murder suspect was arrested for allegedly killing his wife, and his name is Timothy Blifnick, accused of killing his wife. And, they're trying, he hasn't been convicted, and accused of fatally shooting his wife in their hometown in Quincy, Illinois. And this is an interesting story because it shows you the possibilities of be careful what you say, what you do on the internet, because it come back to bite you. Apparently, 3 years ago in 2020, he appeared on a show, Family Feud, with Steve Harvey. I love Steve Harvey.
Oh, I've seen this. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Family Feud. And Family Feud contestant who allegedly murdered estranged wife joked with host Steve Harvey 3 years before a crime that his biggest mistake at their wedding was getting married. And it's like, oh, buddy, it's like, ooh, that's going to be, that's going to be way harder to defend as a
Very
defense.
prophetic.
Yeah, that's going to be way harder to defend as a defense lawyer than having you're fucked on your dust cover on your AR-15.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, this guy gets the
Yeah.
piece.
When you're quoted from Family Feud, it's going to be bad.
It's going to be bad. So the final police blotter, and this is a police blotter story. It just happened. It comes from a different police department. This comes from North Korea. Okay, DPRK, the Democratic People's Republic of North Korea, Communist North Korea, the Hermit Kingdom. Okay, so North Korean agent from the secretive Bureau 10, which I don't know who they are, but they apparently get
they're one up on Bureau 9.
Yeah, they're one up on Bureau 9, and they get access to things that the average person doesn't get because they're agents. So, as it says, North Korean agent faces the firing squad after he was caught Googling. Guess what he Googled? Because he had access to Google and the internet because he worked at Bureau 10.
Yeah, that's right, because China does not allow the internet.
Well, they have the Great Firewall. This is North Korea, but yeah, the same thing. Like they're so poor in North Korea, most of them don't even have phones. But what did he Google? I
would say probably some sex site.
Looking to maybe join Wagner on Pornhub? No,
hey, they're looking for people.
They're looking for people. So he literally Googled Kim Jong Un, the name of the North Korean dictator leader. And whatever comes up in Google, they're going to shoot his ass for that. So if you think that the moderation standards in the comment section of John 911 social media is strict, just remember, I never shot your ass like the dictator in North Korea. So that wraps up episode 294 of the John 1911 podcast. If you want to see any more stories or pictures or links of everything we discussed, please go to the website at john1911.com, the JOHN1911.com. Remember, it's all about shooting guns and having fun. Everybody, have a good day.
Keep the reins tight on your zebra. Bye-bye.